one way to economize is to consider expanding your protein options. And by that I mean rather than having a piece of meat, having it as an ingredient. And some of the things we talked about would be conducive to that, like in soups, stews, casseroles, like the tuna noodle thing. And the reason I say this is because usually protein is the most expensive part of a meal. So rather than having a piece of it, kind of spread it out. And as I said earlier, most of us are getting adequate, if not more, protein than we need. So stir fries would be a classic place to do that. The wraps, the Hispanic meat and beans type thing, chilies, meat and beans again. We talked about the beans, excellent source of protein, high in fiber that you're looking for, and same thing, another way to stretch that protein dollar. The pasta we talked about, and I put pasta and potato together here. They're relatively inexpensive foods, but yet a lot of people think they're fattening. Well, no, it's the portion size and it's what we put on them. So with pasta, focus on the sauce. And as we said earlier, this is a great way to load up on veggies in that sauce, especially if you make your own, or even if you buy one, you can add vegetables to the sauce. So focus on the sauce and watch the portion size on the pasta and look for whole grain, whole wheat pastas, another source of fiber. Potato, I talked about the potato supper. Concoct some toppings, the broccoli and cheese, the chili with the beans, make a complete meal. With vegetables, of course, buy seasonally. We talked about the farmer's market. And frozen, yes, can be more economical and can be as nutritious. The garden idea, and from both the farmer's market and the garden, then one can preserve vegetables to use throughout the winter. Batch cooking, making a couple of pots or a couple of pans and then freezing one for future use. I call it making your own convenience food. Dairy, considering using non-fat dry milk in cooking and baking. It's more economical and it doesn't have a shelf life, so to speak. And overall, what we're talking about here is minimizing one's use of packaged convenience foods, because those cost more, usually per serving, and they may not be as nutritious, and they tend to be higher in salt, sodium. So basically getting back into the kitchen and doing some cooking from scratch, as we used to call it, making some meals. And I think people are finding this actually very satisfying to experiment and expand. I just have, like, a handful of menus that I kind of rotate through and change here once in a while.
Yeah, I think it's definitely cheaper.
Yes.
If you cook yourself.
And satisfying. In the store, we talked about having a list to minimize the trips and your time in the grocery store, using the food label. And of course, that means understanding what to look for and how to use that information on a food label. Placement of food. End caps are it's a very lucrative place for food manufacturers to have their items placed. Things that are eye level for adults or eye level for children. So just be aware that placement of food, those items might be a little bit more costly, or they might not be things that you necessarily need. Unit pricing. Most grocery stores now have unit pricing. This will be a little tag on the shelf under the product telling you the cost per ounce or per serving. And again, this is a way to comparison shop. And also considering using store brands. They're usually cheaper than name brands for canned